Richard.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, welcome along, everyone. Hope everyone's had a fantastic week. Welcome again to our webinar. So our webinar's title, Are You Ready for Launch? And so today is the second in our series. So if you're here for the very first time, let me overview our webinar. Really started due to the confusing information out there and the many questions out there we've received over the last number of weeks. So we've brought together several key leaders in the fitness industry to discuss confidence and reopening and the upcoming changes to the industry. So the first person I'll introduce, a lot of people may know Meghan Jarvis. Meghan's a former World Class BMX bicycle racer. Meghan came to Australia to play professional basketball and most recently appeared as Ninja on Channel 9's Australian Ninja Warrior. Did you win?
Did I win?
Yeah.
I fell really badly.
That's no good.
But so I love talking about it.
So Meghan's she's the CEO and founder of two global health and fitness companies that specialise in corporate wellbeing, that being Well Corp and Buzzville, making her own authority, corporate health and peak performance. Her experience as an athlete, her educational portfolio, sports scientist and kinesiologist, and she holds a Masters of Coaching, and her entrepreneurial ventures have shaped her as a formidable leader in fitness and international speaker. Edwina, or Eddie we'll call, is a keynote speaker and trainer on resilience, emotional intelligence and dispute resolution, has over 25 years experience. You don't look that old. Working, I think you started when you were 5. Yeah. With clients in the range of health and high performance. The company At One specialises in technology and training to improve mental health, reduce stress and improve performance for staff and athletes. It is the host of a renowned stress relief show on the as the Bizversity app. The other person, Justin, JT Tamsett. JT is the #1 fitness industry podcast in the world. Stress relief show on the Buzzville. And sorry, we got a little bit of feedback there, guys. Yeah, so JT is the #1 fitness industry podcast in the world. His weekly Facebook live show, #JT in the Raw, and he builds business strategies with owners to get more people moving. Then myself, I'm an owner of Forte Fitness Solutions. We supply fitness and wellness equipment throughout Australia. I have an extensive background in project management and energy efficiency, many years of leadership in various facets, including volunteer organisations, sporting teams and in business. So guys, today, episode 2, title and questions. The title today is Countdown to Reopening. And I think everyone's pretty exciting. We've been given a 3-step plan of where the direction that the country is going to go and things are going to be launched. And I think, you know, again, there's a lot of people really excited, not quite sure how it's all going to work. Lots of great questions, but I thought what we might do first is start with an overview of the week. Let's look at some worldwide stats, some things that are happening worldwide, because some of these countries have opened up before us. And we'll have a look at some theories and some rumours, and then we'll move more into the Australian type information. But JT, you're right up with everything that's happening around the world. So I think we should move straight into that.
Well, let's start with Ireland, the thriving country that Ireland is. And it ain't opening and no one's happy about it. Ireland have been pushed back, I think I'm right in saying almost to August now. And people are just scratching their heads. They just got no idea. The UK themselves, again, pushed back. It's interesting. You hear the media story and then you hear the person in the trenches story, and they're very different stories. But what appears to be happening in the UK is gyms aren't even close to opening. That's the bottom line. When we move across the pond to the US, it's such a I don't know. It's kind of paradoxical calling it the United States because they're actually the divided states.
Yeah.
Very divided.
And then within states, they're divided.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not sure if you saw the wonderful repartee between a gym owner in Iowa and the local constabulary that came in to give him a citation for opening prior to permission given by the mayor. So he was actually getting fined $1,000, and it was all on video. It was just hysterical to listen to this conversation. Now, in saying that, you know, the poor policeman's just following the rules, and the gym owner is kind of going rogue, I guess. And that's what's happening over there. You've got these rogue operators that are opening. On the flip side, we're seeing clubs that are now been open 2 or 3 weeks. And I even had a conversation today with a club owner that hasn't even closed. He's never closed. He's been operating the whole time through.
Really?
Yep. His state has not had any forced closure at all. So it is quite interesting, the variance.
Yeah,
Then
with that person, just can I jump on that because I think that's really interesting in terms of people's response to that. Like, how many of his members did he say much about the number of members who chose to come in that environment?
Yeah, he said he only dropped around. He dropped by about 25% of usage. Oh. His income dropped. Say for personal training, he was saying this morning that it only dropped $10,000 on what January income was. So January was their number one month for PT income and only dropped by 10 grand. He said, you know, at this point, halfway through May, we're $900 in front of what we were in January.
Yeah, right.
It's really interesting, and I think it makes it almost challenging for us to try to predict what's going to happen. When we look across the ditch to New Zealand, who reopened yesterday, things were slow. No one came out of the blocks really hard. Certainly haven't had the response that the US had in their first week of opening, in those first day and a half. But I think, you know, the Kiwis are probably just a little bit more cautious. Next week, we'll probably see more of them come back into clubs. And of course, we see Western Australia and the Northern Territory open up, ready for operations next week.
Well, interestingly, though, JT, you know, we have to remember that in the Northern Hemisphere, they're coming out of their winter. We're about to go into our winter. And it'll be interesting to see the effects of this COVID in the cooler climates, because they're saying that's where it's like been quite proficient at infestation. So, and the next thing that I think we should be wary of is a reinfestation. We're an island, and I mean, we've only got to get a little cluster somewhere, you know, and I'd hate for it to be a gym or a wellness center, you know, that it sort of comes out of, you know.
I did hear a classic quote yesterday from somebody, and they said, yeah, apparently we have to be really conscious that there could be a second wave of coronavirus. The only problem is you need water in order to have a wave. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so cynical. Like, and I think this is, in all honesty, this is what we're facing as business owners and our members. This is as polarizing as a conversation that we would have around the benefits of CrossFit training. The benefits of religion. You know, religion polarizes people, politics polarizes people, and COVID polarizes people. And it's so hard for us to be able to predict what's going to happen when we open our clubs.
Well, look, 100%. And I mean, I was reading through the Western Australian guidelines, you know, on their reopening, and there's a question and answer sheet that that they want you to, it's called the COVID safety plan, and you get a certificate and and it's based around sport and recreation. So it's not really based around the gym. It just says sport and recreation. And so, you know, it says, you know, the tick points, 4 square meters per person. minimal shared equipment, non-contact training and sport only, and contact tracing. Contact tracing. How are you going to contact trace?
Well, that's it. When people log in, they log into the gym. You'll be able to you can trace everybody that's in the gym at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Do we trace though, JT? And I'm just throwing some random things out there, but the questions that I've received during the week, do we trace, the guy that brings the pre-packaged food into our refrigerator? Do we, and the list goes on and on, the people who deliver paper for the printer, or, the plumber, the electrician. I guess we have to.
You do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, to further JT's point, that's exactly what we're doing with regards to why we have swipe cards, and we're making sure everybody's swiping in and out of our facility in New Zealand that just opened up yesterday. And as you said, the numbers were quite low to start, but I believe it's because, and Richard Beattie from New Zealand has done an amazing job with regards to ensuring the safety of everybody with Exercise Association of NZ and the statements that he made the other day. But I think that's really taking it to another level with regards to the clients really feeling safe in the gym again. So yeah. I think you're right. On Monday, New Zealand will get a lot busier, and contract tracing has to be in place. That's one of the main things he said. And that gyms are only opening to members right now as well. But if you do have people from outside, Richard, you're having them sign a sign-in sheet, and we're just being really careful and adamant that we make sure we're contract tracing everybody who comes in and out of the gym.
Yeah, yes. I guess, if you haven't got the electronic side of things, the swipe cards, that sort of thing, I guess, it's a paper trace. I think we've got to make sure that, we're able to do that. And it's not as much as it's probably a pain in the butt. Right? It is so that, you're protecting your members, you're showing them that you actually, you care for the community, and, because any one of us could be carriers and we do not know. Some people have very minimal show tell signs, and then others, are the extreme. So, there's lots of stories out there where people didn't even know that they had a sniffle or a cold or whatever, but they're a carrier. So, yeah, so we've got to be really aware of that. Look, I think a lot of this stuff is fantastic that the government, and look, honestly, I think they've got to make it up on the fly as well. We've got to be honest. There's a lot of things that have got to be made up as they go along. So one of the other things they've got here in this.
Is this in WA, Richard?
WA.
Yeah, look, I got to say, I really feel for gym owners in Western Australia, because the restrictions that the government are putting on them are just, they're fairly onerous, fairly ridiculous. I mean, not being able to use strength training equipment. I mean, really, all you're doing is doing small group training in a group fitness room. That's all you're being allowed to do. Yeah.
But again, JT, with that poses another question that I got that, arose during the week by one of the gym owners, was that why is it that we are allowed to have 10 people, say in New South Wales, can go to a gym in June, whatever date it is. So 10 people can actually go into the gym, and we might only have 150 square metre gym. So 10 people can go in there. Yes, you've still got to have your square meterage and whatnot, but I've got a 5,000 square metre gym. Why should I be limited to 10 people to come into my 5,000 square metre gym? And that's where the angst is coming along, So, Eddie, I'm going to throw something back at you here, because, as a gym owner, we're bombarded with all this information. Okay, it comes at us from everywhere. Every time you turn around, someone's got a, great idea, or there's another piece of documentation or whatever. How do we discern and go through this information? We've got to mentally, it's got to be waning on everyone.
Yeah, look, I think we touched on this a little bit last week, but one of the things I'm strong on at the moment is around getting clear on our own numbers, getting clear on our own boundaries, or knowing your numbers, you know your risk, and I think having that basic kind of blueprint plan of this is what we're proposing, because the other variables will exist. And yeah, if you have a huge facility, and I think they're saying, well, it's up to 20, I think, in the final for New South Wales, isn't it? It's still not enough for a huge facility. But if that is what it is, what other ways can what other options do you have? What other venues outdoor? That's where, at the end of the day, you have skilled staff. And I think this is where we need to utilize our staff and go, okay, well, there are some variables we're not going to be able to change. That's been set. It's in writing. It's from the government. We know that for sure. So there's no point in challenging the government, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think we have leaders in health setting this stuff. We're not going to be about to change the whole government decision. Let's be realistic and not try and think we can. It's not, from our point of view, it sucks, to be frank. But that is what it is. So let's work with that and get creative with one another. Use the support of other fitness industry peers. The great thing about our industry is there's so many entrepreneurs. It's mainly small business. There's some cool minds if we all got together. What can we do? What can we do outdoor that's different that we haven't done before? And this might be where we can come up with something really creative and something really cool. I mean, yes, the online, some people are still not going to want online. What can we do here? And what can we do with our members, and even call on our members and get creative? And I think that's where the opportunity and a little bit of kind of buy-in from people where they feel part of it, and then we all form this solution together, can really actually increase your community and provide a positive. I don't see any advantage in waiting for things to get better. My way in business would be, let's think of the worst case and go with that, and let's try and, okay, that's not enough. We won't survive with that, which is where a lot of gyms are at right now. What do we do now? What can we do to survive? And that's where I get my best ideas, when I'm on the floor struggling.
Yeah.
That's where the breakthroughs happen.
Unfortunately, too many times.
Richard, quickly.
Yeah.
That I know that we had a conversation earlier this week, Eddie, and it really it set me completely straight, and it made me more relaxed, really, about the entire situation, which was, I was in that mode of, how do I do more? How do I do something different? Exactly what you're saying. We've been in hiding, we've been in lockdown. Now we're being released. We can do boot camp starting next week, and we can get our community back together. And what can I really do to inspire? And you're like, Meg, you're already doing what you're doing well at, is what you should be doing again. And it was working for a reason. And really hammer home your main strengths and what made you thrive in the economy before. That needs to come into play again. And you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You were using it because it worked. And whatever you were doing in the fitness industry before this hit will work again. Whatever your point of difference was, whatever you're really bringing that's creative to the industry, bring that back out, bring the new hygiene measures into play, and you're going to re-spark that unity, that community that you had before. And we're already doing that, so thank you. We've got the boot camp posters up, everyone's pumped. It's that easy, right? It's all about community. They're like, great, we can all get together again. They don't even care if we're doing HIIT training. They don't even know what the boot camp's about. It might be they're happy to see each other.
Yeah, I think that conversation you and I had was around, I think you were trying to do it all yourself, which is, I think, what you were sort of highlighting here as well. You're like, I need to do something more. I need it to be different. And it's kind of like, there's only so much we can do by ourselves, and much scope we have for change. But I think there might be scope, and I think look at the small percentage of the population we've got at the moment. So how can we access those different populations in different locations that we might have used before? How many corporate environments, have it empty there that could have that extra space where you could send somebody? I mean, I don't know if that's the answer, because I'm sitting here by myself doing what I'm not saying. But, I think that was the conversation with you and I that really hit home for me as well. It was like, you're trying to find something that you're like, what else? And I'm like, well, hold on, they're paying you for a certain service. So we get to what we are, or can we? I don't know, I don't even know that was the right situation in that example. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, look, I think everybody's been doing a lot of soul searching, and to not only for themselves but for their staff and for other people around them as well. And Eddie, you just touched on something there a little bit before about as a business owner, and reinventing yourself, or bringing back out of the cupboard stuff that worked for you before. But one of the questions that we had during the week was, and every state is different. Okay, so there's some money that's available. In New South Wales, we can get the a $10,000 small business grant if you're the small business, and the JobKeeper and whatnot. Maybe there's people out there that don't know that there's other types of grants or funding that's available. The mental stress. I was talking to a guy during the week, and he approached his landlords, to get a reduction or to hold off on his lease, and was met with some really interesting comments. But he held himself together and he kind of worked out an agreement with that. And then I've heard some horror stories, where landlords are sort of saying to some of these guys, no, we can't do this. If we hold off your rent, that means that we're going to increase your rent moving forward in the future, and start a new contract and agreement. So some of them, their rents, they're talking about their rent going up, not just for the short piece that they missed out on, but for the next 12 months, 2 years. So, as a business owner, they've got all of these stresses and points that are sort of coming to them. They need to be able to get answers. How do we lead the people to these sorts of solutions?
Well, I think the reality, Richard, is if they're in a lease, the landlord cannot change their rent. They can't put it up. They can't go, okay, when we come out of COVID, you're going to have a 5% increase on your rent. So they need to be, the average gym owner needs to be looking closely at their lease. I think the interesting thing, and it's always been or has become more of an interesting thing, is what is the definition of a gym? Like in the olden days, a gym was 1,000+ square meters, and now a gym might be 150 square meters. And those gyms may only have 1-year leases. So they're in a really dire situation with the landlord, because the landlord goes, all my other investments gone down the toilet. This is my only thing, and I've got a tenant. Well, when we re-sign a lease for the next year, which is going to happen in October, they're going to be paying 5% more. So my gut feel, not my chest, my gut feel is that there's a bucket load of fitness businesses that don't have great lease arrangements, and they're the ones that are going to be in pain.
Yeah, agree.
And there's quite a lot of, I know there's been a lot of mediation going on with landlords, and there is only so much that they can do. Like they can't, as JT sort of said, they can't just suddenly put your rent up. They can't. And actually, there have to be fair and reasonable terms. There is the government's guidelines around that do exist. There's not no guidelines. And so they do have to be, someone put things up, and they have a requirement by law, and it's very dependent, as JT suggested, on the different leases. But in my opinion, if I had a small business and I was in that situation with a gym now, I would be paying for legal advice on it, because we had a 1-hour call about mediations for this exact thing, and there's lots of nuances. A lawyer, but there were lawyers on the call who were giving advice on it, and it became very clear that it's complex and it's worth a couple of $1,000 to go to a lawyer, if, in my opinion, obviously depending on what your situation is, but to get advice, because there's plenty of scope for negotiation on that, and they can't just pull the wool over you and rort you, basically. They're not able to legally.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
I'll tell you, let me share. I've got a client, they went to their landlord and they said, can we get a deal? And the landlord said, yep, I'll give you 3 months rent free, but it means that you have to sign another 5 years on your lease at the end of the deal. And he's like, 3 months rent free for 5 years? Let's get back to the mediation table. So there are some landlords that are, quite frankly, taking the piss from us, and that's
they're
not
trying it on, right?
Yeah, that's not fair. But because of the code of conduct, they can't get away with that.
But they will try and push those kind of things. So people need to understand that there are laws behind this in place, so please do not feel that you are going through this by yourself and you're left out in the cold. there are solutions there somewhere.
Take the negotiator that's below me or to the side of wherever you are to me, Eddie. Take the negotiator in with you. She's available for rent.
Yeah, exactly.
For 12-month lease pricing.
And also on top of a lawyer, there's a lot of amazing accountants and brokers that can assist in specifically specialize in gyms and lease agreements. And we have contacts for those. So I've been referring a lot of people to specialized accountants or brokers, even before lawyers, which saves them a lot of time and money because they actually can know more depth than a lawyer can when it comes to what they can and cannot do with regards to their financing arrangements. So usually they end up getting involved in it at the end anyways. So
and that's another point. There's people out there that have got finance loans, all of that sort of thing. Sometimes they feel a bit hopeless, and they've gone, I'm stuck where I actually am in my finance lands. Can I go out and refinance? And some of them have struggled with that. Interestingly, some of them have come out of it much better. They've gone and been able to get hold of finance that's allowed them to save a lot of money. And some people that I've steered towards some finances have actually been able to go out and borrow more to enhance when it does open up. So every case is different. So don't be frightened to ask the question. Mm-hmm. The old saying is, if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right.
There might be a free webinar or a very cheap webinar being run by the Resolution Institute with these lawyers that we were discussing that the other week. So if that is the case, I'll post that on here. I'll find out about this week on Wednesday evening. So
yeah, awesome. And I'll drop the accounting link in here as well that do like World Gyms and a few other major chains.
Awesome.
And so guys, in the other states, like every state's different. I had a little bit of stuff there in relation to WA. New South Wales, what's the forecast, say, in Queensland or Victoria? Are they following the same pattern as New South Wales? What about Tasmania?
Well, Queensland is. We're very similar, and New Zealand's kind of doing a similar thing as well. That we're allowing ourselves approximately 3 to 4 weeks for each stage, and we're making sure that we're COVID free and/or the cases are not increasing, and then we'll be able to go to that next stage. So it's laid out, but there are requirements that we need to meet as a state.
Yeah. So I don't know about Victoria. I haven't. I think they will follow, but at this stage they look like they'll be a couple of weeks behind the other states again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Daniel Andrews seems to be flexing his muscles down there in Mexico and making it a bit tougher for everybody.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, the poor, the AFL, where have they gone? They've gone to Queensland. They can't come out of WA or South Australia, I believe, but they've gone to the Gold Coast, and they can move around the Gold Coast and come back and play AFL in Victoria. So the borders are really interesting at the moment, the crossing of the borders.
I mean, look, I think one of the hardest things, and maybe Eddie, you can help with our mindset in this. As owners, we almost feel like victims at this stage. With the conditions that are placed on us, we feel like victims of whatever the government are saying or doing. But just for a moment, can we put ourselves in the shoes of a premier or a prime minister? Mm-hmm. Like the last thing, they've done no training on this. They've never had it before. There's no precedents that have been set. They're being guided by what they would consider a medical experts. Mm-hmm. And the last thing that they would want to do is open up gyms or open up pubs or clubs and then have a hotspot and have 20 people die. They're going to live with that for the rest of their life because they made that decision. So I understand, because my business is affected just as much as every other fitness business. I get the frustration, but sometimes I just have to pull myself up and think, shit, these politicians are doing the best that they can to keep people alive based on the advice that they're receiving.
Yeah, I think you're right, JT. And I think the thing we have to be ready for, I mean, we've got a ski lodge down the snow as well. It looks like, we don't even know if there's a season starting in a few weeks. But I think we have to, or as you're saying, that's where I was saying, we have to be realistic. They might open the gyms and there could be an outbreak and then we'll all be shut down again.
Yeah.
And so I'm nervous about seeing posts of people going, yeah, we're going to open them, which is great. I'm just still nervous though, because it's not over yet. And I think there's a point where that's why I'm like, let's expand options within the most restrictive environment here. And if we get more than that, fantastic. But we need to be real about the fact that the next 6 to 12 months are going to be really volatile potentially. Best case scenario is it all opens and it flows and it goes there. But I'm incredibly nervous. And the other thing that we're at the whim of is the media. Our members are going to be watching the media. So whatever comes in the media is the headspace that's coming into our gym, regardless of what we do. I mean, that's where Fitness Australia's been great, trying to lead the way and give some education. But we need to be, giving reassurance, which we've discussed before, but there's only so much we can control. And so that's why I just think there's a point where we've got to go, okay, let's go worst case. Let's plan for worst case. And if everything goes to plan, we're going to be way above our numbers. But what do we need to do for worst case? I know for worst case, some people, they're going, right, well, that's not good for us. Well, then get creative, because that's much better than sitting there putting our heads in the sand and going victim, oh no, this is not fair, we've got to change the government. It's not going to happen. And I think it's quite likely we will have the odd outbreak, as you say, JT, there might be the odd hotspot. And then what's going to happen? Gyms is probably going to be on the chopping board first up. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not saying it's right, but it's a potential. But I think if we're not, we need to be real about where it's at. And I think if we sit there going, we're going to open now, and then stage 2 by mid-July, we'll all be back on track. Let's hope that's the case, but let's not sit there counting on that, because if any one variable goes wrong in this environment, as you say, JT, they're worried about people's lives here. They'll shut it down. They're not going to care about it. They're talking about people's lives. So they're not looking at individual business. So we need to be really real about it. Let's go, well, if something goes wrong, what's our plan? And looking at our numbers right now, what else can we do with this? And what negotiation can we have with our landlord? And where is this at for worst case? Because I think a lot of people I've spoken to that are just holding their breath. We're all right as long as that happens. It's like, well, that's not a good position to be in any business. That's too high risk. So I think there's a point of that if the level of stress goes up if you're counting on it all going right, because that's a really risky assumption, I think.
But also, Eddie, you touched on it again on something there, which is, the members also need to be aware that there's an amount of responsibility put back on them. Some of the cowboys, if you want to call them in the industry, it's like, let's just open the gym and here's some weight equipment and away you go, but and then we've got our clientele that can come in and do exactly the same damn thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? The industry's back on its knees.
And that's that culture that we were talking about last week, that as leaders of our business, we have to determine that cleaning culture or that honesty culture of not coming in if you've got a sniffle as a member. We have to define that early, and then we have to keep reinforcing that as leaders through our communication with our team to our members and our communication to our members. And we can be doing that now.
Yeah.
100%.
Training around staff, as you mentioned last week, I know we discussed for those conversations, because, for example, if someone breaches that, it may be that you have to ask a member to leave. How's that conversation going to be done?
Yeah.
And well, I mean, and at the end of the day, you're only going to earn respect from the members if you uphold what you're setting. I mean, that's saving everyone. But the way that's delivered is incredibly important for brand and relationships. And I personally think you're better off losing one member if they're not going to honour everyone around them, and making everyone feel uncomfortable and losing all your members. They don't feel like it's a safe environment. So, but the training around those conversations, there's one level of conversation of training going, okay, you need to go and watch your equipment, and you need to, excuse me, sir, excuse me, madam, do you mind wiping equipment down? That's one conversation. If they can insist on not doing that and members complaining and you actually need to ask them to leave, that's a potential, you know, hopefully not, but it's potential.
Can I tell you the other thing that really shits me?
You're going to anyway.
Well, no, I don't have to if you don't want to know. But I mean,
Absolutely.
this is Friday wind down, so let me
Yeah,
have
give us
another
wine.
sip. Let me have another sip of my sponsor's
Oh,
beverage.
yeah. Sponsors and natural wine.
The thing that I find irritating, and I'm seeing this more out of the US press, I expect that there'll be this in New Zealand and in WA coming out over the next week to 10 days, is these so-called experts who say you shouldn't go back to the gym. Under what premise are they saying that? Who knows? But they're saying, oh, you shouldn't go back to the gym unless your gym's doing this, which is just way up there, like more than what God would do under these circumstances. Then don't go back to the gym. And the thing that worries me most is that tabloid media shit that impacts our members, that while they're sitting at home, they get that message. So we have to up our communication because they're getting this tabloid stuff. What do you, I mean, am I wrong? Am I right? What do you guys think?
Look, 100%. It's really interesting when I go out and I interact, because I'm quite heavily involved with the surf club, and so we've had to lock down all of our facilities. We used to have a gym in there. Everything is locked down, so there's no member activities in or around the facility, as you can imagine. But the feedback from the community is just so bloody frustrating, in that anything that happens there is it's the surf club. Yet it can be anybody from the community, but the media said, on the TV, they've got a picture of somebody being down in the surf club or kids down there in a group or whatever. And it's that mentality that sort of goes, they point the bloody finger. And this is what we've got to be careful within our industry here, is that, the media is portraying these things based on what? Based on what? I teach people a saying that pretty much that by what authority does that person speak? Okay, so, when we're listening to all this great information, what authority do they speak to us from? Are they a doctor, a scientist, some sort of authority, a politician that's telling us? If a policeman tells you to get out of the road, you get out of the road, right? They're an authority. But a lot of these people, if you look beyond their title, quite often they're just somebody who is like your sponsor there today. Okay, JT, just somebody that's got something in mind to promote, that end result.
Well, they're those damn social commentators. They never existed when I was growing up, but now they influence decisions on the consumer.
Yeah. So it's interesting. But moving on to another question, in preparation of as we're moving into this exciting next couple of weeks, to opening or whatever, what are we, our marketing and should be based around what it is that we're going to do. This is our standard. This is what we're going to do. This is what we expect of you. So in our marketing, our going out on Facebook, what are you going to do to secure me coming back into the gym, So it'd be interesting on some of your ideas there in relation to your marketing or, your engagement strategies, something to create that excitement. I don't know what sort of numbers would be, that would come back into the gym just normal, like just drift back into the gym because the door's open. Or what are we going to do to entice those people, those numbers to come back in? I think we touched on this the other day, but if there was a drop of 10% in your membership not coming back in, or 20% of your membership not coming in, that's your bottom line. That's your bottom line in profits, isn't it? That's probably the difference between your doors staying open and closing. So it's about, encouraging and bringing those people back in, that it's safe, it's going to be okay. So it'd be interesting to see any thoughts that you might have around, some suggestions, marketing, meetings, Facebook, whatever, to something that we might not have even thought about.
I don't know about anything that no one's thought about, but I just, what I did, I had a chat to, I was in down Jinnabon, I had a chat to High Country Fitness, to Manuela down there about what she was doing. It's a small regional setup, a small location. No, JT, you know her. Yeah. I had a chat about what she was doing. She's such a dynamic girl. It was interesting because I think, she's focusing on different gym size classes that are within the range. They've got different price points of 2 to 4 in a class, 4 to 8 in a class. And so starting to get creative about what you can, it's what I was talking about with what you can control. So bringing that marketing into sort of, hey, and testing your own market, of course, but hey, this is what we usually do. We can't do that now. So we're going to offer you these different things and tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, but start getting creative about the different product offering in your market. And maybe it's a higher price point. Maybe you're bringing different people that way. But I think just churning out what we did before and going, we're still here and we love you and we're great, might not work anymore because the environment has changed. People appreciate the amount of work we're having to do to provide the service now, and maybe that will invite other people in. That connection point is something that's lacking in all of our lives. I don't know about you guys, but even getting my morning coffee I get excited about now because I get to talk to someone. So it's almost like people will pay for that, and so anyway, that's just my sort of feedback on what I was thinking in terms of what I would do if I still have my gym right now, and speaking to a smaller setup who, she's only got so much space, and it's actually the same problem for the bigger setup. What can you do with that? And can you your trainers out and be doing home visits more and bringing in different packages around those smaller groups and changing your price point and offering, and then maybe you'll have another whole product range plus your bigger classes and groups when you're open, and so suddenly you're getting more income streams in that way. I don't know what the others think. That's pretty, that's probably not specific to marketing, but it's just some other ways of thinking that came to me this week.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get some feedback from people out there in gym land, wellness land, to see what sort of keys they're sort of using. Like we're all in this together. The more people we get back in active in fitness is a lot better for our country, not only just in fitness but in mental health as well. And we all know there's a lot of links there with that. So it'd be interesting to get some feedback from what other people are actually doing, to ensure that they're engaging with their members and bringing those people back and their staff.
And Rich, actually, the community piece that we discussed last week, look, I've actually got some gigs lined up from free offerings I gave to our local community and I had no agenda, hand on my heart, just gave away some free stuff and was like, here, here's this, I've got all this content, and a lot of it was my fitness stuff that I just had videos and put it all up. And I've now got speaking gigs lined up and some webinars and stuff. And I'm sure that sort of engagement that you've had, I think this is where the work of people and the gyms have kept that connection with their members. But as we discussed last week, the community stuff where you go, okay, that's actually marketing, not that you necessarily, people see whether you're authentic or not. But if you then go into some of those communities, go, I gave you all this for nothing, no pressure, but hey, this is what we're offering, then you're bringing in those different markets and maybe making up that 10 or 20% that you're talking about, Rich.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that I picked up from one of the local pubs around here, he's only allowed to have 10 people in the bistro or whatever, but they're making a big song and dance about it, be the first one back in, that sort of thing, so yeah. But what they're actually doing with that is they're creating like a Zoom or a party kind of atmosphere, and they've got the big screen up and they're going to link all the poor people that couldn't get into the pub, so they're creating some fun and some activity around that. So I think I think we've got to do that sort of stuff as well, sort of go.
And JT, I saw one of the people on your page talking about Christmas.
Sorry, Eddie, we lost you there.
On your page.
Say that again, Eddie. We lost you.
One of the members on JT's active management page was saying he'd put Christmas tree up for the opening because it was like Christmas. I just thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, you might get some local media for that one.
Megan, have you got an idea? Because if you haven't, I've got one.
Yeah, I've got one. I'll go after you.
So just a thought that I've worked with this week with some clients is that if you think in your local community, everybody's been hurting, they've been pain, can you go to, or let's say a dozen to 20 different shops in your local community and ask them for a $5, $10, $15 voucher and say 100 of those vouchers. And so for the first 100 people that come back into your club, they receive 20 vouchers valued at $10 each for local businesses in the community. Now, if each of the local businesses also did the same thing, then all of a sudden you got 20 businesses that are trying to promote local business, local spending within that. And we know the first 100 people back through our doors will be our biggest advocates. So when they get something for free, they're going to love it. They'll post it on socials. That's going to help. Plus for us, we can post on socials. When you come back, we've got a special surprise for people when they come back, thanks to the following local businesses. That's my idea.
Look, it's a great idea. I mean, it's about paying it forward, you know, and engaging in the community. I think that's a great thing. It really is, JT. Yeah.
Mine follows on from that a little bit with regards to evangelists being the first people back into our clubs. So, one, allowing them to share the information or share the club out to other people, just like you were saying, instead of local businesses, but like just customer to customer. Allowing, a lot of people are doing free boot camps, let's say 30 days free, and if you refer a new customer, then they get another 30 days free. So you're making that domino effect. But starting the community right now is key, and allowing everybody to come back, in particular in Queensland, for free boot camps right now to build up to the opening and start that community feel, I think is a huge one. Putting that out on Facebook is going to be critical, and having people share that, and then winning a surprise prize at the end for somebody who shares it the most, for example, has been really effective. And right now is the time to start really stirring your groups, like your Facebook groups, your community on Instagram, getting them pumped up and getting them ready for the launch that will take place. And a transition, going back to what you were saying, Eddie, as well, with what you can do now that's a bit different, is we're finding a lot of gyms or studios or our partners, for example, some F45s, and Orange Theory in Brisbane are doing a mixture of face-to-face. So there'll be a certain amount of people in the gym. And like your story, Richard, the poor people or the other people that choose not to come into the gym that day are going to get it via Zoom. So they'll be instructing the class with people there, but also still have a live video to help get that extra 10% on their bottom line, for example. So it's going to be a mixture initially of both face-to-face, but if it's a small boutique studio, most likely it'll have an online component, so that they're still being able to charge some people that are training at home that day. And as you know, you're gonna have to book in for your session. So it'll just be a very different landscape, and allowing those different verticals, allowing online as well as face-to-face will be critical. So those are a few things that people are doing. Facebook groups are awesome. Get those pumping, and then giving away some free offerings and going BP, like JT said, would be awesome right now. Would be really good.
I just got an idea from what you both just said, which would be an extension on them. So it's only small, but I just was thinking, you know, all the restaurants are only allowed 10 people, and they've mainly got people in at the peak times. You know, in your late morning classes or in those quiet times of the restaurants, going and having conversations with the other business owners and going, can I book this for 10 of our, you know, members after their session? We'll line up your coffee after for a chat and book it with the restaurant in some of those quiet times and stuff like that. They're getting extra value and going, oh, cool, you know, we've got a coffee organized as well. We're in on the local restaurant because, the restaurants are open, but you can't get in, right? But there are these quiet times in the middle of the day that maybe that could be another value anyway.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And it's great promotion, because a lot of people may not necessarily go into that restaurant. And so when the restaurant is open and you know, can have more numbers, it might encourage them to actually go back into and try that restaurant as a, you know, as a good venue. Look, another thing, during the week, you know, we were talking about cleaning. a number of people came, have spoken to me about cleaning. What are our solutions? There's lots of supposed answers out there, and everybody has been talking about cleaning a surface, but there's also a lot of information out there talking about this is an airborne virus as well, which can stay in the air for approximately 4 hours, is some of the information that I've received in the last couple of weeks. And so, surface may not necessarily be the total solution. So what are some of the things that you guys have heard out there? Look, a friend of ours, they have a distillery, a gin distillery, and so they're making, under the government regulations, this hand sanitizer. I've heard, that is something that can be maybe even sprayed into the air or onto surfaces, that sort of thing. So it's a pretty high, I think it's 80% alcohol, or maybe even higher, I can't remember now. What have you guys heard out there that's, that might lead people to a solution?
Well, go ahead. You know what I'm going to say.
You go.
Well, I believe in what they're doing, what they were doing initially in China, and now we're doing a lot in Canada, and it's slowly happening in the US as well, is fogging, which enables it's via the air, and it's actually shooting out. And now there's environmentally friendly, non-chemical based cleaner that you can utilize that's been TGA approved, as well as been added to the COVID-19 list as of today, called EnviroClean. And it's like hand sanitizer, but you can use it in these fogging machines, and it allows you to get every single space covered without having to wipe everything down and worry about the air, et cetera, et cetera. So I think initially, and it's the only way that they've proven, I think it was from the numerous different countries' health and safety guidelines, before anything's put in the ventilation systems or any kind of control that you put in your gym, and then it spreads and disperses the air in a circular fashion. Before those, fogging has been approved as the best way, other than cleaning and wiping down the surfaces in a very laborious way, to be the most effective in killing COVID-19. So I suspect we're going to see a lot of fogging in gyms, in municipalities, indoors, outdoors. I think that would be one of the main ways.
How do you spell that, Meghan?
Fogging.
Yeah, it's probably best if you Google fogging, you don't slip an L in there anywhere. We had somebody in the active management community, like didn't understand it, and she accidentally typed in flogging and was quite repulsed at what came up in her Google search. But yes, it is fogging, everybody.
And that's because fogging has been searched so many times due to the lockdown, like one of the #1 words. Now fogging.
Yeah. That's concerning.
Yeah, and look, and that's good advice. Look, there's talk out there about HEPA filters, air purification systems, and but that doesn't take away from the surface cleaning as well. I think, Meghan, so I mean, we use our equipment. If you're a gym visitor, and you wipe down your equipment.
100%.
Okay, that's still key. That's still key.
How long does fogging take, Meghan? Can I ask?
Yeah, it depends on the space, but it could take an hour in a boutique studio, and a larger space probably 2. And
then you go straight back in after, or is there like a period of waiting?
No, then you want to wait approximately 2 hours.
So you need to do it early morning or late.
But interesting though, Meghan, with that, I think it would be dependent on the type of the product, would it not? Like, I mean, some of those products that are out there could be quite toxic, if you want to say that, and then there'll be other products which are not quite as toxic at that.
Yes, yeah, that does matter. I mean, it does depend on the product that you're using. Most people that are doing fogging are commercial cleaners, and they're adding this to their repertoire, and they're utilizing botanical products. They're trying to source the best, and a lot of them are not using EnviroClean, which is one of the #1 products on the Australian COVID-19 kill list, because of what you're saying, Richard. It has bleach in it. So, to spray bleach all over equipment, etc., could damage things too. It's going to stay in the air. So it does depend on what product they're using, but generally fogging is going to take up to an hour or two, and then you want about 2 hours. So we're seeing fogging done, you know, between the hours of 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. if you're a 24-hour gym, which goes back to gyms that are opening for 24 hours. I mean, my main concern there is how are we monitoring our clients when we have nobody on? And what's happening when we're not there? And I know that we have cameras in the gym, but I mean, I'm not up, you know, at 3 a.m. checking if everybody's okay and abiding by the rules and the cameras. So I feel like no matter what, we're opening ourselves up to a potential, going back to what we were discussing earlier, small outbreak if we can't control and or can't see what members are doing, and we're just putting our trust fully in the members.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a bad thing that at times during those hours that no one's on, someone comes in and does a full clean anyways.
You know, something else that
Sorry.
I became aware of, which you just reminded me of, actually, Megan, is around, I just actually saw some documentation from the government this morning, which you're probably aware of, but I suddenly just arrived in my head. Workers' compensation, there's now a condition in workers' compensation.
We've lost you there, Eddie.
Under COVID-19 if they contract the virus. Oh, okay. So can you hear me now? I don't know.
Yep.
I'm on.
No.
Just the workers' comp, there is now a condition under workers' compensation claims that exists for staff to be able to claim workers' comp if they get COVID-19 in the workplace. So just something else to be aware of. Obviously, I do some work with workplace health, and it's now, yeah, there's a whole category under that. So it's something to be aware of for employers as well, that it's, yes, you know, we want to do the right thing anyway. There's also that other ramification if your staff actually do get COVID-19 in your, I don't quite know how they prove it, but like it would be hard to disprove if they're doing an 8-hour shift or something and they come down with it, you could be liable for workers' comp claims as well.
Yeah, wow.
That's
pretty big call, isn't it? So the other thing, during the week I was talking to some guys and they were talking about, you know, being prepared for business, you know. So I mean, gyms have been closed down now for a number of weeks, you know, some of them are almost like, we haven't been near our gym for a month, you know, but now it's time to get back in there and to get things in working order, you know. So make sure that your equipment, you know, if it's electronic, you know, that it's going to work. Don't leave it to the last minute. Even strength equipment, you know, if it's cable or any of that sort of thing, you know, clean it down, get it ready to rock and roll. So when the doors do open, that you're not going to be wasting time, and you know, it looks fresh and clean and everything for the, you know, some of the gyms that I've been into doing repainting, you know, just refreshing the whole thing. It's a low cost to do some of that stuff if you're handy, that is. I mean, you know, not everybody's you know, great on paint brushes and that sort of thing, but you know, give it a fresh coat of paint or do things like that. Even cleaning windows, believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there, you know, yeah, you know. So any ideas there, guys? Any?
Yeah, I'm still on the staff issue. What I did want to know, because it's about hygiene, Rich, so I'm not jumping off, but I'm because of the workers' comp issue in my head, I just wondered, JT, if has there been much, and Megan, has there been much discussion around, or Megan, have you got signed agreements from your staff that they will follow the procedures and something signed off from them to follow whatever you recommend from a workers' comp point of view and just from a liability point of view? Because there's a lot of talk about agreements with our members that I've heard, but I haven't heard much about staff agreements and ensuring that they do follow the protocols. And
yeah,
if they don't,
we started with staff agreements.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they were happy to sign. So what's in those? Is it follow those protocols? What sort of stuff have you included in that?
Well, because we started with New Zealand, we're following the protocols from Exercise New Zealand that Richard set out at his press conference on Thursday, as well as the government guidelines that New Zealand set out whilst the gyms were reopening on Thursday. So we've gone through the government, and then on top of that, whatever governing body we're under for their insurance who were literally taking the words right from the print and putting them into a contract.
So if they get
This,
if they get COVID-19 when working in your premises, are you still liable? You probably are. Is that?
With regards to them signing their, I mean, as far as I know, we've done everything in our position to make sure and mitigate, because they're signing it, they're coming in at their own risk.
Okay, cool.
But then if they don't come in, they don't have a job.
Yeah.
So and this,
that's the problem that we were discussing last week.
yeah, and this is not just going to be in our industry. This is across multiple industries. Personally, if I had the choice of working in the local pub or working in the local gym, I'd be taking the local gym, because I think you'd have less chance of getting COVID in the gym as a worker than you would as an employee going into a pub or even in some shopping centres. You'd have to be worried.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we've got the procedures, that covers it. My concern is if you get a staff member who's only doing a few hours and comes in and just gets a bit slack, and then they get it. And it's like, I'm just, anyway, I just...
I don't know many clubs that have got a new agreement signed between the club and the employee around that. My concern also, Eddie, is if you do have those part-time instructors that come in to teach a group fitness class and they wake up with a sniffle, they would normally go to work. I reckon that most of them would still go to work. I don't think many of them are going to go, oh, I've got a sniffle, I better not go in. Whereas that's the number one thing where they're not supposed to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, exactly. Interestingly, one of my friends was in hospital yesterday and he was telling me this has been a problem even in the hospitals. They had apparently, he was in St. Vincent's Centre, I probably shouldn't say that anyway, he was in a hospital. And 3 of the doctors, surgeons contracted COVID-19 because people were lying about the fact that they'd travelled, and then turned out that the patients had it and didn't, disclose. And, for whatever reason, people need money or whatever. And so that's where I just was like, just covering employers in terms of, you don't want to put your staff off, but I think everyone appreciates and taking some responsibility. The staff have to take responsibility as well. We put all the things in place, but...
So maybe that's the take-home action from today.
Sign off and agree, because, we're all more diligent. If we've signed a bit of... Sorry?
Well, I was going to say is maybe that's the take-home action today for people that are watching, is get your documents together that your staff need to sign to help, I love that word, mitigate, and protect yourself. So talk to your HR people. I know if you're a member of Fitness Australia, they've got HR advice. If you're in New Zealand, obviously Richard's got stuff. Talk to whoever you need to get that document ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You've raised a really, really good point, that, look, I did not even think about that side of things, even, for people that I employ, work with, and so it's relevant across a lot of industries that, what we've actually raised here. And I think that is something that, like you say, JT, somebody's watching this, it's probably going to spark a lot of comment, out there, because again, you've got to go back, and there's a lot of employees. How do you renegotiate your employment?
Mm-hmm.
We certainly don't want to turn away, staff. You've certainly got good staff or whatever, but it's really raised a relevant point. Yeah, it really is. So, guys, look, we're probably at the end of our session this afternoon, and so I think that we can carry this on next week. I think it's a really, what's been raised here in relation to what you've just said is something that we could actually carry forward to next week. I think we're going to have some really exciting stuff next week as we move through another week of this COVID and business land and mixed and whatnot. So again, thank you all very much for putting your time in this afternoon. Really, really appreciate it. And I know that, a few people have come back to me during the week with some really great comments. So thank you very much for your time, guys. Have a great week. Stay safe. See you all again next week for drinks.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Sounds
All
good.
right. Good on you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.